Frank Flaguzzi is the one that set you off. He just said there was collusion with Russia. That's what you said. Yes. And
yeah, that's all I needed from Frank. And wait, you're saying there was collusion between Trump and the Russians? Really? Yeah, that's not really much of a headline, and it sparked the immediate thought that okay, we've got 10 documented felony obstruction of justice counts because Trump tried to cover up his coordination with Russia. They're sitting there ready for the prosecuting.
Well, yeah, you said Mueller meticulously documented Trump's several felony obstruction of justice crimes, preserving the evidence for when Trump left office. Mueller pointedly testified that Trump can be prosecuted for his crimes upon leaving office. So how about some justice? Mitch McConnell said the same thing in our counting now third treasonous episode with Donald Trump, the second being Ukraine, which is part of this. I mean, it is almost mind-boggling, Glenn, isn't it, to get your mind around all of this? So yes, Mueller basically said he should be prosecuted for the obstruction of justice. Mitch McConnell said he should be prosecuted for the insurrection. And Glenn, please tell me justice is coming. I don't understand how we could just say, I mean, all crime is in the past, right?
Yeah. Here's the thing, Steph. We are all so frustrated because we see Trump, preening around like a deranged peacock in his third-rate Florida resort, continuing to push the big lie, continuing to gin up potential violence just as a vehicle to raise more money. We get that. But what we have to remember is that for 4 years, we had a Department of Justice headed up by, lackeys and sometimes worse than lackeys. And there was no real investigating going on into Donald Trump, his corrupt cabinet, his criminal family members. So we have to give Bill Barr a minute. He's been there for a handful of weeks.
Merrick
It
Garland.
is going to take
Merrick
some
Garland.
time. Merrick Garland. I'm sorry. Merrick Garland. He's only been there a short time. And he needs to reassemble, a law-abiding cadre of prosecutors at the Department of Justice. Then he has to investigate and dig in. Then he has to indict. So I absolutely believe it's coming. The hard part is not giving in to the frustration. And you can see from my tweets, from time to time, I give in to the frustration because, Donald Trump needs to get got.
Well, yeah. And I mean, Glenn, thank you for that, because you tweeted that. You said, well, we're trying to be patient, waiting for accountability and justice. While we wait, Trump rumbles around his third-rate Florida resort, telling lies calculated to inspire more violence. Let's hope the delay is simply because DOJ is dotting the insurrection I's and crossing the treason T's. I mean, Glenn, I will say, as many people were saying yesterday, there is a reason they let this out, this information leak. And what is your take on when we knew this? The Trump administration, this happened 5 years ago. I'm sure they knew this, right? I mean,
nobody knows when we knew it. I saw Adam Schiff last night on Lawrence, and he was asked that question, and Lawrence pressed him. And even he said, and I credit him all day long, that he's just learning about it now.
Yeah.
Why didn't we know it previously? Because Trump and company buried it. They perpetrated it in the first instance, and then they buried it. So, that's why all of this has to come to a head, and Donald Trump has to get popped with a great big indictment.
Yeah, and do you feel like Barr is going to have legal responsibility? Because obviously, as we said at the time, his memo, even more now, is how is that not a crime in itself? Him saying exactly the opposite of what we knew to be true, that there was no collusion and no this and no that.
Yeah, Barr has to be criminally investigated. He wouldn't be the first attorney general ever to be prosecuted and sent to prison.
Oh, no.
And I don't give any of these people a pass. It's too much to hope for that all criminal politicians, whether appointed or elected, are going to ultimately be held accountable in a court of law. There's going to have to be some triage, right? We can't prosecute everybody, But I think Garland is up to the prosecutorial task of deciding who catches a charge and who doesn't. We just have to be patient.
Well, I agree, Glenn, and I just feel like these crimes really, in my mind, are treason. I don't understand how we let any of it go. Just go, well, we'll just let Ukraine go, but okay, maybe we should prosecute the insurrection, but let's let Russia go. That was too long ago. I mean, you can't, for history, for president, you can't let any of this go. This is an illegitimately installed president that absolutely colluded with a foreign power to get elected, then tried to, this is the second big thing. I was saying, Glenn, we almost forget that the second impeachment, the Ukraine thing, was part of this Russian disinformation that they used again to commit treason and cheat again in 2020. And then when he lost, then we have the insurrection and that level of treason.
Yeah.
I just don't. Are these all separate? Charges, trials. Glenn, explain to us what should happen.
Oh, yeah, they are definitely separate conspiracies, and these would be charges that are brought separately. There's some obvious overlap,
Mm-hmm.
but you can go back to the base. Yeah, you can go back to the basics of Donald Trump bribing and extorting President Zelensky to do him a political favor, though. And Bill Barr was deep in the mix for that, because in that same phone call, Donald Trump said, and by the way, in furtherance of this criminal scheme, get with my guys, Giuliani and Bill Barr. From that moment forward, Bill Barr should have, at a minimum, been conflicted out of all legal decisions pertaining Donald Trump, because he was just as a co-conspirator. So we're going to see, some people say it's too much to get our arms around all of this criminality, from Trump Russia to the insurrection. And the reality is, it's too much not to get our arms around this criminality if we care about the future of our democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, and the precedent that all of that creates. Well, okay, so there's so much here. Can you, Glenn, real quick before we move on, because we've got so much, is how, explain to people who don't understand how this is new, because if you watch me or Rachel Maddow, or you're, read any of Malcolm Nance's books or any of this, like, this doesn't seem new. Can you explain what is new and what's a big deal about yesterday?
Yeah, what's new about it is we knew all along that Manafort gave sensitive polling data and Trump campaign strategy information to Konstantin Kilimnik, and we knew he was involved with, nefarious Russian actors, but we didn't know, or it had not been disclosed to the public, that Kilimnik then delivered that stuff directly to Russian intelligence agency sources. So this is really, this completes the criminal chain of the Trump campaign, right? Manafort, who was the campaign director or manager, I forget his exact title, facilitating Russian interference in our election. The circle is now complete. And you know what? Yes, it's collusion. Yes, it's coordination. But it's also a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And maybe Mueller didn't know about it at the time he was forced to complete his report, perhaps prematurely.
Yeah.
But this is conspiracy stuff.
You know what it reminds me of out here in LA is OJ. That, there was some evidence that came up they didn't get even though there was a mountain of evidence that they didn't have in the criminal trial. Him saying, I'd never wear those ugly ass Bruno Mali shoes, and then the pictures surface, but, not until after the criminal trial, but before the civil trial. It seems like all of this evidence just confirming what you and I already seemed obvious, but it's just, I do think it's stunning, because it does feel so long ago and so many crimes ago to people. They're like, oh, well, why is that a big deal? I mean, it is a big deal. Anyway, so let's talk, you mentioned Bill Barr. Let's also talk about Matt Gaetz, because okay. And you said the same thing that I said. This is a big deal. To seize a sitting congressman's phone, for Bill Barr to okay that, especially when he, as you said, either helped all of Trump's friends and persecuted his enemies on, he's Trump's personal lawyer. So you said the fact that the FBI obtained a search warrant for Gates' cell phone means the FBI DOJ had enough evidence to prove to a judge's satisfaction there was probable cause that Gates' phone was or contained evidence of criminal conduct. Again, what is your take on that? When he was Trump's biggest loyalist, that Bill Barr obviously knew of this and okayed it.
Yeah. So first of all, the building blocks of a search warrant, if people don't know, after the FBI drafts up an application for a search warrant, they bring it to a federal prosecutor. I've signed off on thousands of them. And then I have to go through the affidavit. I have to make sure they have enough supporting evidence. And importantly, I have to sign off on that application affirming that there is probable cause to believe there's evidence of crime in the place to be searched, in this instance, Matt Gaetz' cell phone. And then you have to walk into a federal judge's chambers and present that and make the pitch to the judge. Let me tell you, of all the thousands of search warrant applications I signed off approving, there are search warrants and then there are search warrants. There's probable cause and then there's probable cause. And when you are debating whether to seize and search the cell phone of a sitting member of Congress, you got to have probable cause plus, 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 plus. So the fact that they got that search warrant for Matt Gaetz' cell phone all but guarantees there's a whole rack of crime they were expecting to find in that cell phone. So Matt Gaetz is done. At this point, it's only a matter of time.
OT and then he, as Nancy Pelosi said, it just couldn't happen to a more deserving person. Okay, the Chauvin case has rested, as you tweeted yesterday. Defense has rested in the Chauvin case. The defendant opted not to testify. The case presented by the defense was extremely weak and actually strengthened the prosecution's case, in my opinion. That's exactly what I thought. You said why Chauvin's expert witness, medical examiner David Fowler, actually lost points for the defense and brought us one step closer to justice for George Floyd. That's what I thought, is they really got that turned against them, didn't they?
Yeah, the fact that they had to try to throw into the mix carbon monoxide poisoning because George Floyd's face was in proximity to the tailpipe of the police vehicle for 9 minutes. First of all, there was zero support that he suffered any significant levels of carbon monoxide in his system. But more importantly, even if you take that at face value, let's indulge the fiction that he inhaled too much carbon monoxide. Let's answer this question. Who is it that crammed George Floyd's face up against the tailpipe and held it there with his knee on his neck for 9 minutes? You want to believe the unbelievable testimony of David Fowler? Then he's still guilty. Derek Chauvin is,
I thought the same thing.
Improper force.
I'm watching as a layperson going, and how is this good for the defense? I mean, you said Dr. Fowler's testimony, if credited by the jury, is proving that Chauvin is also at fault for holding George Floyd's head in such close proximity, makes Chauvin a little extra guilty, and not to mention a little extra sadistic. I mean, I have to hope, obviously your hashtag justice is coming. I mean, I have to hope. I mean, and now we have this horrible Dante Wright killing in the middle of it. Now a 13-year-old in Chicago. We are just a tinderbox, Glenn, of people watching this. That why are we even at this point of tasing or shooting people or children in this situation? Right, in situations like this.
But Steph, the only progress that we see in the aftermath of that horrific shooting of Dante Wright is we saw an instant arrest of the police officer who did that. Can you ever recall that happening? Usually it gets investigated for a year until, everyone hopes we forget about it. And then they decline to bring charges for some BS reason. So at least it looks like the system is beginning to react more seriously and more appropriately to these excessive force incidents. Now, if we could just make some headway in stopping the dang incidents in the first place.
And, the whole Black Lives Matter, obviously our chant at a lot of the rallies I went to, it's just a hands up, don't shoot. Well, now we see this 13-year-old kid who put his hands up and still got shot. So, it feels I don't even know what other word than exhausting. That it's just, there is no reason in situations like that to shoot, particularly when you're saying put your hands up, and he turns around and puts his hands up and he gets shot anyway.
And the Army lieutenant who has his hands outside the vehicle when he gets maced in the face repeatedly for sport. That was nothing more than a prejudiced police officer enjoying the exercise of macing an Army lieutenant who happened to be African American. Period. I mean, that I was in the Army as
Oh boy, we have this is
well,
a bad
back in the
morning
80s,
for a bad Glen
created
Kirschner.
excessive force incidents.
Yeah, sorry, Glenn, your audio's breaking up a little, which sucks this morning because I need every second of you. Because you're out there doing the Lord's work. You tweeted, "Let's bury the big lie. Let's vanquish voter suppression. Let's support only those businesses that support free, fair, representative democracy. This is not partisan. It's American. Join us at thepledge.com." You said voters' voices are loud, but for corporate America, consumers' voices are even louder. We have the power. Let's use it. So that's the other thing you're working on, which they all sort of intersect at a certain point, don't they? And as I said when I started the show, Glenn, and here's Russia in the middle of all this, right? Like trying to promote race. They've always been trying to promote racial. They would like all of us to either kill each other in a race riot, die of COVID, shoot each other. I mean, they're in all this NRA pro-gun stuff, the election interference. I mean, and thank God we have an American president who stood up and put real sanctions on them yesterday. And what I like about it, as much as I wanted him to come down like a ton of bricks, there is deterrent in there, according to experts, because they're saying, yeah, they didn't go after the oligarchs or the banks, but that's the next step. It's Biden going, this is here. If you do any of this again, we're going there. I mean, we have a real American president again, right?
We do. And look at how strong Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been.
Yes.
And look at some of the legislation that is now being introduced to increase the number of Supreme Court justices, which is long overdue. And
Thank you.
Everyone should remember during our nation's history, we've had a Supreme Court with as low as 5 justices, with as many as 10 justices. 9 is not a magic number. So it looks like Congress and the Democrats are beginning to step up and take the fight to the Republicans. And, when you talk about a real president, Steph, I'm going to say this, even though I'll probably get some blowback. I didn't know that I could ever be moved to tears just by a president picking up a child's toy.
Oh, me
yes.
too.
Oh, my God.
Me too.
Oh.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell even Nancy Pelosi's
that's
in
a
mid-speech.
real man, a real president, a real grandpa. That's like, and then, and then when he stands up to Russia, he stands up to Putin, he sanctions Russia. I think the combination of Biden and Harris and his cabinet members and Merrick Garland, I think we're going to get there.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, you could tell even Nancy Pelosi, who knows what a good man Joe Biden is, was literally in mid-speech going, and now the president of the United States is picking up a small child's toy. Okay. It was such a moment. Oh, my God. But, I wanted to say real quick, Senator Markey said it best. The court is broken. And make no mistake about it, the court is broken because Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican colleagues, and Donald Trump broke it. And so, it's our turn to fix it. Sorry.
Yep. Let's get after it. Let's get after it.
Get after it, as Glen Kirschner always says, #justice is coming. I always feel better when you're here.